Grayscale and VanEck have each submitted revised registration documents for U.S. spot BNB ETFs with the Securities and Exchange Commission. These amendments are part of the standard procedural process for ETF registration and indicate continued engagement with regulators. The filings are not a confirmation of approval or a launch date, but suggest that both firms are actively working to bring a regulated investment product for BNB to U.S. markets. The BNB token is the native asset of the BNB chain, and a spot ETF would allow investors to gain exposure to the token through a regulated financial vehicle. This development is significant because it reflects growing institutional interest in altcoin investment vehicles beyond Bitcoin and Ethereum. Grayscale has filed at least 2 amendments to its S-1 registration statement, which is a common practice during the SEC review cycle. These amendments typically address feedback from the SEC, clarify fund mechanics, or update disclosures. For example, the first amendment might have addressed questions about the token's market structure or custody arrangements, while the second could have refined operational details such as how the fund will track. Most people arrive after the move is obvious and the easy upside is gone. We focus on serious crypto education and high-quality signals before the crowd rushes in, so you can understand the setup earlier and move sooner. If you want that edge, visit the link below now. The price of BNB, or how investor redemptions will be handled. VanEck has also updated its registration materials, reflecting a similar process. The fact that 2 major players are pursuing the same product highlights the potential market demand for a BNB ETF and the regulatory pathway being tested by both firms. The SEC's standard S-1 registration process is the same route taken by Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF applicants, meaning that a BNB ETF could follow a similar approval or rejection timeline. However, the outcome is not guaranteed, and the SEC has not indicated when it might make a decision on BNB ETFs. The amendments suggest that the SEC is actively reviewing the filings rather than letting them sit idle. This procedural activity is a sign that the regulatory process is moving forward, even if the final approval remains uncertain. Investors should be cautious about interpreting these filings as a green light for a BNB ETF launch. Instead, they should view them as a step in the broader regulatory review cycle. The next signal to watch for will be any official SEC decision or further public comments from either firm. Until then, the BNB ETF remains in the procedural phase of registration. The presence of multiple applicants pursuing the same product also raises questions about market readiness and investor appetite for altcoin exposure through ETFs. If approved, a BNB ETF could provide a new avenue for institutional and retail investors to access the token in a more regulated and accessible format. However, if the SEC rejects the applications or requests significant changes, it could delay or even prevent the launch of a U.S. spot BNB ETF. The regulatory. Most people arrive after the move is obvious and the easy upside is gone. We focus on serious crypto education and high-quality signals before the crowd rushes in, so you can understand the setup earlier and move sooner. If you want that edge, visit the link below now. Environment for digital assets remains in flux, and the outcome of these filings could set a precedent for future altcoin ETF applications. The BNB chain's native token has already seen growing adoption in decentralized finance and blockchain infrastructure, and a U.S. ETF could further increase its visibility and utility in traditional financial markets. The key takeaway is that while the filings are a procedural step forward, they do not represent a final outcome. Investors should continue to monitor official SEC communications and any updates from Grayscale and VanEck as the review process unfolds.